Well, here we are. It's 3 years later, and I'm hearing again about Hivemapper. And I've had a little look around the news site, or new to me. And when last we spoke to Ariel on the weekly chat, things were just standing up, and it wasn't really available in South Africa, but it looks like it's available all around the world. But I don't really know what's available. So, Ariel, please walk me through Hivemapper as it is now.
Sure. Well, great to reconnect, Gary. So a lot has improved and changed in the 3 years since we chatted. So maybe just start off with like a high level, like what problem are we solving in the world? The problem we're solving is quite simple, is that the way that we build maps hasn't fundamentally changed in over 15 years. And so the issue fundamentally is that Google still drives around Street View cars and moves them from, city to city every couple of years. Each of those cars costs $500,000. People launch satellite systems up into space, cost $100 million or so. And what that means is that the frequency at which we update maps is incredibly slow, right? And then the cost to the customer, to the enterprises that then use these maps, is really, really, really high, with just tremendous number of legal restrictions around data use, all that kind of craziness. And so our approach really dramatically reduces the cost of mapping and the frequency at which we can actually update a map to keep maps fresh. Because the world is changing, and the world is changing at a much, much, much faster pace. And so that is fundamentally the problem we're solving. And the way that we do that is by taking video from commodity drones and soon commodity dash cams, and we produce this three-dimensional map. And we're now scaling the map across the world by building and expanding our contributor network of people who can come into Hivemapper and contribute video and be financially rewarded for that video. And so what that video then does is that it basically grows coverage of the map, and it then refreshes the map in areas that we've already mapped. And so from an enterprise perspective, you now can just come into Hivemapper and purchase the updated and fresh maps in different regions. And so that's what we call our global map. And here you're seeing an example of that in the Stanford, California area. This is about a 50 square kilometer map that is being updated and refreshed at a nice clip. And so if I zoom in here, it's all three-dimensional. It's all accurate to roughly 30 centimeters, absolute accuracy. And we then provide a whole set of tools around that map. So whether it be object AI to...
Sorry to jump in. You know what I'm like. What am I looking at this now? I'm looking at this as the person buying the map, or as the person... oh, there's that famous tower. Or as the person that has contributed the data to the map.
This is from the customer perspective, right? So this is the data product that we then generate for the customer, or for all customers. And they can come in and, like I said, purchase different regions. And then they have all of these analytic and visualization tools around the map. So for example, over here, I can come in and say, okay, I would like to see all objects that are taller than, and then I can just scrub here and say, taller than 30 meters, 40 meters, 50 meters, and anything over red is now 40 meters. So obviously the tower, there's some trees that are taller, and there's another building over here that's taller than 40 meters.
Now that's instantly cool. If I want to enter this brave new world of urban air mobility or advanced air mobility, I can instantly see what I'm going to hit with my air taxi. If I've mapped this area using this service without a great deal of faff, I suppose is one way. Sorry, I'm thinking aloud as we go. Yeah, sorry, I'm thinking aloud.
Yeah. And so there's, we now see, usage from, airborne, like you're talking about, for sure. But also just because, you're flying at such a low level that you can start to get streets. And then with the introduction of dash cam, you start to get a lot of super granular information at the street level, right? And so being able to do like slope measurements about, okay, how steep is this road over here, right? So can I navigate, a very vertically, like a very tall truck, right? Where there's potentially a very, very steep road over here, right? If I'm a logistics company, right, and I have all these trucks and they're delivering, what is the height at which it's going to back up into the warehouse? Is it 5 feet? Is it 8 feet? Right? Because all of that information is really critical. Because if I then have to like unload the stuff from the truck to the ground and then move it to the warehouse versus just being able to move it to the warehouse directly, that saves me time. So all of these like super granular pieces of information that don't exist in Google Maps, don't exist in Apple Maps, are really critical for businesses.
So the ground unit that you're going to have, that's going to come with it. I'm a big fan of OpenStreetMaps because here in Africa there really are very few maps, and at this weird time that we find ourselves in, there are great swathes of areas near me that just aren't mapped at all, so all this. So where I'm going with that is I use Mapillary, which is a dash cam thing, which feeds into OpenStreetMaps and was recently bought by Facebook, I think. So because Facebook is the back end of their mapping thing when you look for people, when you have the maps on Facebook. So where am I going with that? Are you going to have sensors on this thing for pitch and roll in the road and all that sort of thing, as well as just the GPS for geotagging these things? Or are you going to work it backwards from the photogrammetry?
Yeah, so what we're also sharing with the world today is this open dash cam. So the open dash cam is something that we're in the process of building. Right. And this open dash cam is a dash cam like all others, but it is optimized for the purposes of mapping. And so it solves some additional problems on top of just a regular dash cam in terms of really making the process of mapping incredibly passive, right? Such that, if you were to install it, Gary, and just drive around your area, you would then be passively mapping that area and wouldn't have to think, oh, okay, I now got to upload the data and then I got to like do all this stuff. Like, no, like, most people, I realize there's a lot of people who care about that level of kind of mapping and are super passionate about it. And we love that. But there's a whole lot of other people that don't want to bother with that stuff. Right. But are totally cool just saying like, yeah, I'm going to install this dash cam and I can make a little bit of money from it. And that is kind of really the target audience for this, in addition to the GIS mapping geeks.
So how much?
Why don't you talk a little bit about the monetary piece, because you just mentioned that's a big part of the news as well in terms of capitalizing on the collection.
Hang on. I want to talk about other nerdy stuff. Hang on, just a minute. Money's money. Money's money. Now, I'm instantly thinking, what I'm thinking is, so I'm a medical worker. I go out to clinics all over the place within Africa, and I don't care about mapping because that's not my job, but I am going to the hard to reach places that me as a sort of a mapping fan would like to be able to map, but I've no idea where they are really, and I've got no reason to go there. So I can instantly see that would be a great use case for having this on the back of the mirror. Is just, okay, whilst you're going out to do your job of work, then we might as well find out exactly where you're going and help people. Because sadly, we are at a time where we're going to need to get medical workers to hard to reach places fast in the next year or two, and they're going to need to be there reliably. So I'm sorry I butted in, but because you're going to tell me I can make money doing that as well, which is apparently is exciting. Sorry, it was just, how are we going to monetize this?
So, what we've done with Hivemapper Studio is break up the world into these tiles that you see here. And not every place in the world is worth the same amount, right? So there are certain places that are, very, very valuable because they're changing very rapidly, and there's a lot of customers who really want that data. Or there's other places in the world which, like, we'd love to have them, but we're not going to necessarily pay upfront for them. And so that would be more of like a royalty model. And so this tool does two things. It helps drone flyers figure out where to map, right, and where to spend their time. And we recognize that for some people, it's about the money, and for other people, it's also about the fun, right? It is enjoyable to see with basically just video, that the world and the map is just automatically expanding, right? So we see a lot of people coming into this and they're like, obviously the headline is the dollar number, but then they also enjoy it, right? And so those are kind of what we see. I mean, frankly, it's a little bit hard to explain in terms of that level of enjoyment, but you map an area and then you see, ooh, geez, there's a little hole over here.
No,
like you're very motivated to
unfortunately,
go
I'm nerdy enough to completely get it. I completely get it.
Yeah,
because I do a little bit of mapping every day, which is not a proud boast, I know. Yeah, no, I completely get it.
But I think, Gary, this is important. This is an important point in terms of open. I mean, you're in the OpenStreetMap community, and we feel that the free volunteer model of crowdsourcing is a bug, right? And I think what we're trying to say is there's value in the data that people are creating. It may not be, the kind of money that you're going to pay your rent or pay your mortgage with, but there's value, and you should be compensated for that.
No, I hear that.
And so we think that's a really critical point. And then from the customer perspective, once they know that there's a reliable set of people who are doing this and they're being financially compensated, that then gives them more confidence that the maps that they care about are actually going to be updated and refreshed on a continuous basis versus OpenStreetMap. I mean, we hear a lot of customers saying, I will hire a group of people. There's actually this transportation logistics company and operating in the Detroit area. They hired a whole set of people to go out there and collect imagery and then go manually update OpenStreetMap such that the data was high enough quality for their use cases. That's crazy, right? That's not a way, that's not what they want to be, how they want to be spending their time, right? And so we think that's an important point here in terms of how we're building out the contributor network is a lot different than other players have.
Sure. But then, the real question to ask is, well, how on earth do you get the money to pay people to do these bits of the world or whatever?
Well, that customers are buying, these maps, right? So on the other side, we have businesses, enterprises who are then using and consuming all of this data. So it would be like, any business that is using or paying for Mapbox or any other mapping provider, embedded inside of that is all of the data acquisition and data collection and data, curation costs of that company. But ultimately, there are businesses in the transportation sector, in the insurance sector, in the energy, in government, yada, yada, that are the buyers of the Hivemapper product that are ultimately gaining a tremendous amount of value from this fresh map that get created by the contributor network. So
one way I've gathered data then is when it finally arrives, I've got your open dash cam or whatever you were calling it, and that's sat on the back of my rearview mirror. And then, of course, we talk drones. So that's great. What do I attach that dash cam to my drone? What happens?
No, two totally separate, right? If there's a set of people out there who have drones, and you can be flying your drone. We support a whole wide range of drones, and so that is one group of people. And then if you also want to be driving around and collecting from the open dash cam, that will be another mode of collecting.
But what's going to stop me thinking that I'm in one of your Hive cells and getting the mapping wrong? How am I going to do it accurately with my drone?
So what we do is when you go to Studio, which is the tool that we use to connect people's drone to Hivemapper and to the mapping network, you can just come in here. So first of all, I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. And so let's say I wanted to map an area over here, okay? So then I'd say, okay, well, these cells over here, these tiles over here are worth about $2. These ones are worth 50 cents. And over here, these are not worth, you don't get any bounty fees from them. So I'm going to choose some of these silver ones. And so you would just go bang, 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 and then hit generate flight path.
What sort of area are we looking at? I'm seeing 500 meters on the scale, but each of those cells, what sort of size were they?
They're 0.1 square kilometers.
Right. Okay.
So each of that, those 6 cells is 0.6 kilometers. You select where you want to launch from. So you click over here, bang. And then you then open this in Litchi. So, you know, people in the drone community are very familiar with Litchi. Great tool.
Yeah.
Okay. And so now all you have to do is save this. So just come in here, save this, you know, new Hivemapper Studio mission, you know, Menlo Park.
Yeah.
Whatever. And then it'll be there on my phone, connect to my DJI drone, hit the play button, and boom, it'll automatically go and execute this flight path.
Normal each mission.
Flight path, and this flight path is optimized to build the map that you see over here.
Now,
we take the guess. Yeah, go ahead.
So I was just going to say, does that take into account the weather? It's a couple of years since I've used Litchi. I'm going to have to set myself up and try this here. I can see myself having to try that. Does that bring the weather in as well? Would that compensate if it's a windy day? Would that pull that mission and say, hey, that's impossible, or is that not how Litchi works these days?
No, it doesn't. I think right now it does not use weather. So if it is very windy, then this mission will. So this mission over here, 22 minutes. You can definitely do it with the longer range batteries on most DJI drones, as well as some other drones like Autel and stuff like that. I think there's on our YouTube, there's somebody did like a mission that was, I think, 35 minutes or so, or 40 minutes. So we've seen some missions that are getting up there. But no, to answer your question, is it does not account for wind. Now, let's say if it gets to waypoint, let's call this 61. So I think there's 86 waypoints. So let's say it gets to 61 and then it hits like 20% battery or 25% battery. It will automatically return to home. And then what you can do is just swap in a new battery and then, you know, proceed again with waypoint 61 and then finish it.
And does this accommodate fixed wing platforms at all, or is it only the popular multi-rotor platforms?
I think it's on our website. I think there are some platforms that are fixed wing. I'm going to say one of the Parrot that is supported, but I'd have to go in our in our docs section on our website. We have a list of all the various platforms and video formats that we support.
So I live in a house down by number 22 there, and I just keep repeatedly doing this mission. Are you just going to pay me again and again and again every time I go and fly that mission, or someone else comes and does it? How does that work? Once I see on here it says Jonah and Andy, and it says owner. Who died and made them the boss? How come they're the owner?
Yeah. So first of all, like that is like one of the really fun parts about it is it does automatically like put your name on it, your username. So you can, you know, your username on Hivemapper could be anything. You know, like I think one of our users down in Australia, his username is Mr. Dundee. There's another one which is MacGyver GIS. So people, you know, have a lot of fun with this. But to answer your question specifically, no. If we will then have to flip that tile back to basically gold for you to continue earning from that. And the reason is quite simple, right? There are some areas in the world where we want a fresh map on a weekly basis. There's others where, you know what, it's okay if it's a month or two. And so that really just, again, we're bringing that level of transparency into the market where, you know, every single tile on Earth has a different value at different time. You know, let's say a big hurricane sweeps through Texas or Louisiana, you know, then what we're going to expect to see, and what we have seen, is that the value of the tiles in those areas will increase.
What is the maximum number it might be?
It's a good question. There are certain areas actually in Southeast Asia right now that are pushing, I think, $3 per tile. They're really high demand in certain markets in Southeast Asia. That's the most that we've ever seen. The average across the entire world, I think, is about $1.75 per tile, roughly. I get you the exact name, Gary, the exact number, Gary, but I think that's roughly what it is as of a couple weeks ago.
So let's say it then. So I mean, all the all the tiles around me are going to have no value, but the value would be in would be getting my. So I take these, and then do I get access? Could I pull this data into OpenStreetMaps? That's what I want to say, as the flyer, or is it?
So yeah, so you yourself, that's a good question. So we've definitely gotten that request quite a bit, right? Where people want to then, I mean, what's the problem with OpenStreetMap, right? OpenStreetMap is relying upon stale data oftentimes, right?
Sure.
So mapping on top of a stale satellite image doesn't do you a lot of good. And so we definitely have heard that desire from a lot of people, businesses and, other, people in the OpenStreetMap community, is to say, okay, I mapped with Hivemapper. I want to then take this and then, integrate it with JOSM or, with Facebook's, competitor to JOSM. And I want to then, basically update OpenStreetMap using this data. So if you go map this, you can absolutely do that. The tooling, I think, on our side will be something that we work on to make that tooling a lot easier. But absolutely, like this, you added this to Hivemapper, you can then update OpenStreetMap accordingly.
So that's cool. So that'd be a really handy tool for just keeping an eye on what you've actually done, the work you've done. I'm instantly thinking of some areas around here that would be fun to do, and that would be a way then of me just keeping a record of what I've done and getting it on there. So how many, if you don't mind me, just if I ask questions you don't want to answer, then just say no or swear at me or something. Yeah. It's all perfectly fine. How many users have you got now?
There are, I think we said this, I think in our blog post, there are now about 8,500 contributors in Hive, who've signed up to be contributors on Hivemapper.
And just run me through. So I've submitted the images to you, and then you're doing all the processing there and using artificial intelligence and clever things to bring it into reality of these maps. And as if you fly this area frequently, are these buildings getting sharper? Is it all getting better over time?
Yeah, let me show you this. This is actually really cool. So here what you see is basically, I mean, it's a calendar, but it's basically a timeline, and it's showing you the different sections of maps. So let's choose this week, right? So during this week, this is what got added to the map, right? And I can start to go back in time, going to May, what section of the map. And so what's happening here is individual contributors are adding different sections of the map at different times, even different drones. Once they have the open dash cam, that will also be integrated here as well. And so it really is this collaborative mapping experience. And to your question, so if you and I, let's say, both map this area, then what would happen over time is you would see that area grow and expand, as well as the resolution of the building. So let's say I captured that building from the north and you captured it from the south.
Yes.
The overall building now is going to be a lot higher resolution and a lot crisper because we each came at it from a different direction.
It's exciting stuff. So who are the all right, I know what people are going to ask. So now I do fancy earning a little bit of money. I'm in part of the world where that might work. How does that work? I signed up as a member, and then how do you pay me? How frequently do you pay me? All those sort of good things.
So yeah, you sign up, and then we ask you for your PayPal email address, and then we'll pay you through PayPal. And in any country that PayPal supports, we will pay you via PayPal. If you're in a country that does not support PayPal, then we'll figure out a different way. To date, to the best of my knowledge, I think that we've been able to pay everybody through PayPal. I could be wrong about that, so I'll double check with you, Gary. But it is super easy in terms of being paid. There is a threshold in terms of, I think we pay you, I think, after a certain threshold. Like I forgot what it was. It was either $10 or $20, something like that. So you have to hit that threshold and then you automatically get paid out. And I think we're now doing payments on a monthly basis.
And I go out, it's pouring with rain or it's the middle of the night and the images are rubbish. I'm going to jump up and down and you can't do anything with them. But how do you tell me nicely that my images are rubbish?
Well, that is definitely like over there in terms of our supported drones. We definitely say like, you know, use one of these supported drones. So we know that the camera is high enough quality. So I think we get over that issue in terms of high enough quality. We do not accept right now video that was captured at night. So if you were mapping and you were at night, that you won't get paid for that.
And to be clear, it's video rather than stills. Why did surely the resolution's that little bit lower with video?
Yeah, so video, okay, that's a good question. And we get this a lot. And, you know, I think it was like, you know, in the early days, it was a little bit controversial in terms of why we chose video. But the beautiful thing about video is, listen, the cameras are just getting better, right? So, you know, the resolution on every frame of every video is getting really good, right? And so is it as good as a still? No, but it's really good. And so over here, you can start to see, you know, the quality that you start to get. And this isn't even, you know, as I zoom in here, you can start to, you know, get that level of detail. I mean, this is a basketball court, right? You could see the little tick lines on the actual basketball court. You know, over here, it looks like some new grass or, you know, some new vegetation that they planted. And so as I zoom in here, you can start to see that level of detail. In addition to the level of detail, the thing that was also really important to us is that video is entirely passive, right? And so on your video, on your dash cam, all you have to do is hit the play button, right? Everybody knows how to record video. But setting up a camera to be like, okay, I'm going to take a photo every 5 seconds or every 10 seconds or every 30 seconds. Oh, wait, I didn't get the number right. God, I messed that up. And then you have to redo everything. It just introduces like a lot more friction for the people who are actually doing this and collecting. And so like, why? We asked ourselves. So that was the reason we chose video. And, you know, I think that people can look for themselves in terms of the quality of the maps and judge for themselves in terms of if it's high enough quality.
It's you would think that the planet was maps now, wouldn't you? I'm just throwing something out there. You would think intuitively, you would think, come on, what's there left to map? But we actually need much bigger, much cleverer maps. As I'm thinking of not urban air mobility, micromobility now, of all the electric scooters in the world and all the electric bikes and skateboards and all that sort of thing. They're going to need very granular street level mapping so that they don't hit that telegraph pole or whatever it is when they autonomously drive back. And yet, as you say, that is going to need to be updated very, very quickly. So what if we do? Oh, I know the elephant in the room. But what about if all this is in controlled airspace?
Yeah, so controlled airspace, definitely obviously trickier. And so we definitely don't want people flying, you know, over airports and stuff like that. That would not be good for anybody. And so I think that's one of the reasons that we also are introducing Open Dash Cam, is that we're saying is like, listen, not every place in the world can you actually fly for a variety of reasons. And that's fine, we realize that. And you know, here's another mode of collection that you can get the ground. Are you gonna be able to get those, you know, the entire airport from the ground? Obviously not, but you can still get all the main arteries of roads going in and out of the airport. And that's really where the action is, right? Like the action is around that kind of stuff. So it's not it's a much better solution in terms of the cost effectivity, but is it a like, you know, solution for every single mapping use case in the world? No.
Well, it's going to your elevation data is going to the precision of it is going to increase quite dramatically once you have a lot of dash cam stuff. It's so where will you be in 5 years' time with this? Where do you see, if you don't mind answering that, where do you see the company in 5 years' time?
Well, we think that what we're doing is not just providing, today if you go out and you want to say, hey, I want new software for my company to do mapping, visualization, analytics, etc. Oftentimes you have to go to multiple vendors, right? And that's pretty frustrating. And then you have to go and figure out all the data licensing issues for the actual map data that you're then trying to push into your product, into your software, to your mapping and GIS software product. And so what we're saying to people is like, you don't have to, with Hivemapper, you don't have to worry about that, right? We have a contributor network out there that is feeding fresh data into your map, sometimes depending upon where you are on a daily basis. And you also get all of the visualization analytic tools, and you don't have to be a GIS person, expert, or you don't have to be a software developer. You're seeing the tools right here. They're very accessible. And
so can I measure? So I'm an end user. Can I measure stuff on here easily?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Can we see
you want to measure?
Yeah, just measure me something. Yeah.
So this field is,
yeah,
about 100 meters. This basketball court,
and then we do things like the terrain and things like that. Can we see like a shed of the slope shed there?
Yeah, so you do slope. So slope is one of our newer tools. So you basically say, okay, you click here, click again, and then the redder it is, the steeper it is.
Yeah.
And so, obviously the fields are all white because they're all flat, which is great. You can do view shed. So you can basically, situate yourself, let's say on top of this building, and then say, from this building, what can I see and what can't I see?
Yeah, will my antenna work up there? That sort of thing.
Exactly.
And as the end user, then, as the person paying for the data, can I do I save the scene and have that for later, so that I could share that with a colleague or somebody else?
Yeah, so you can export the data. So you're seeing right over here, export, and you can bring it into another tool if you want. You can screenshot it. So you can take, if I go back over here and I go back to view shed, I can then screenshot this, right? So I can include it in the presentation, and it has all the lat long data embedded in the actual thing. I can create groups, right? So like, let's say you and I, Gary, we're in the same organization. We can create a group, and then we can just share like the specific maps that we're working on together, right? And so that's super useful in terms of being able to like not be overwhelmed by data, but just sharing within the people who really need to be focused on this area of the map.
And can I run? I'm now going to put a 500-story apartment block on that because I've had enough of that playing field. So we're going to build a huge building on there. Can I run a timeline of change across the as it's being built?
Yeah. So that's this tool over here, and then you can select the dates that you want to track. So you want to say, okay, I want to track, what did this place look like over here? Let's find a date. I don't know. I'm just kind of choosing here. Bear with me because I don't know if all these dates.
And then as the end user, the map user, would I, if I'm building that building, would I bump the value up of those grid squares in order to get it mapped more frequently for me?
Yeah, so we would, if you want it more frequently, then basically the price, just goes up and it repeats, right? So it's like, okay, I want this, like, we have a lot of customers in the construction space and they're like, hey, I want updated maps on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. Then those cells, to your earlier question, just refresh, more frequently, basically.
And then is it first come, first serve? Is it a race between you and me to get down there on the right day to get it mapped?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is a little bit of a race, right? That's how Uber is a little bit of a race. Like who hits your driver, who hits the button first, who's around.
Yeah, I life. It's the modern world. It's dog eat dog, dog eat cat, or whatever, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
So here, like you can add your own layers, right? So this is, you can upload any GeoJSON or KML file, and then you can do it. So like right now, this is just the Stanford University perimeter. Everything inside of this is Stanford University property. But anyways, you can, there's a lot of different ways. Any GeoJSON KML file you can upload here. So it's super cool in terms of just like being able to add your own data from any other source.
So then we've got two players here. Me as a pilot operator who wants to earn a little bit of money with my drone. If I happen to live in a city with squares that are or cells that are monetized, then I simply need to register with you, give you my payment details, and go and do the flying and fly via Leachy. My platform has Leachy, and that does the flight planning. And then the other way is if I need map information. So what do I do then if I need mapping? How does that work if I need map information from you?
Yeah, right now the best thing to do is contact us, and then our network team, which is the team that focuses on all the contributors, will ensure that those areas get covered rapidly.
And what sort of money, because we've seen a couple of dollars for me as a pilot to earn, and what would it cost me to get the sort of data if I was interested in this area?
So you can look on our pricing page. We kind of have different cities, and you can kind of see like for that city roughly like how much that would cost you. So the entire, if you wanted all of the globe today and you want an annual license of all the data that we have today, the price is about $250,000 a year, but that's everything. A smaller city like Atlanta, I think, is about $5,000 for the year. So it's pretty costly. Yeah.
So for $5,000 a year for a city the size of Atlanta, and providing you've got enough for Atlanta is a good city to choose. It's A for Atlanta. Provided you had enough people mapping there, it's only going to cost me $5,000 a year to have something I can measure, and I've not got to fly or do anything.
Yep, exactly. So you just come in here. So you'll get Atlanta.
That's cheap, isn't it?
And we have, yep. I mean, that's the beauty of this model is that, because we're not running around, $500,000 Google Street View cars, it is just a much more cost-effective solution.
Wow, I was expecting. I'm a bit gobsmacked because that has quite big implications, doesn't it? And then I could even, so I would fly if I did have a building site. How would I do this? I'd pay you for the thing, but I'd make sure my site was up to date by flying it frequently myself. But then I'd have the surrounding data and street data and things I could then run simulations through of traffic.
This over here was actually a construction project, right? These 4 big buildings over here. And so, if you go over here, you can start to see how frequently these were updated. It was about on a monthly basis. And so, you can start to see these buildings from when they were, just basically all terrain to as they grew story by story. And, the construction project managers in Stanford University can be tracking that along the way.
So this is the cheeky question. I can see you're going to have drone operators paying to fill out tiles. That I can see as being a simple sell, and then the odd mapping nerd like me wanting to do other bits and have the dash cam to go around and do stuff for interest. I can see that not being an issue. How do you persuade, and again, you don't have to answer this, how do you persuade the building companies that no, this is okay, this is what you need?
Well, that is where we have to, I mean, it's a sales job in part of the answer. But I don't think like what we're seeing right now is that like once people realize that this is a capability, then it's like, ooh, that's interesting, right? Yes. Some people don't even realize that this is a capability. And so they just satisfice to, quite honestly, Google Earth or Google Maps. And then they're looking at the data and they're like, oh, wow, this is like from 2 years ago or 3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, a large hotel chain came to us and they're like, oh my God, you're telling me that, you know, with this network, I have 3,000 properties all over the world, of which at any given time, about 700 of them are going under some renovation or construction project. And I could be tracking all of those on a monthly or weekly basis. That's interesting, right? Like they didn't realize that that was even a thing that they could buy from a mapping. So, you know, they have their own GIS people, and their own GIS people are trying to do a bunch of crazy stuff. And then they happen across this, and it just opens up their lens of all the different things they can be doing on top of it.
Very
and so,
interesting. Yes. Yeah, no. I completely get it. So for the city of Atlanta, how do you define a city? By their city boundaries, the geographic boundary of the city, whatever the city claims that to be.
Yeah, exactly, for the city boundaries, yeah. And what we're seeing right now, just from you know, customer demand perspective, is that, and I think you kind of hit on this in the earlier parts, is that there are countries in this world that are not well mapped.
Oh yeah.
You know, like we all fixate on the Washington D.C.s and the L.A.s and the Londons of the world and the Parises, but you know, if you go to countries in cities in Nigeria or Bangladesh, you know, they're not mapped to the anywhere near that level of quality.
No, nor any degree, nor even in with the open street mapping thing. And then you might end up having very well intentioned people, very well meaning people standing up and having mapathons and things, but the quality of it can really be pretty terrible. It's better than nothing, but but sometimes is it? So yeah, and as I say, for emergency workers that are going out to clinics and things, to finally properly define where the infrastructure actually is, rather than just, you'll often see a map here will just be drawn on a bit of paper and it's roughly here and roughly there. And you would think that every delivery troll, I'm going on my high horse now, but you'd think everyone in the world would use GPS coordinates or what 3 words or something like that. And that's still not even happening. But a well-drawn paper map always works. I assume you can output this into that sort of a format as well somehow.
Sorry, into which format?
It's just to say, generate a what you'd consider to be a paper map of this area. You know, a normal top-down paper map that somebody could print for directions and things.
Yeah, so that is coming so the ability to kind of do it, well, you know, just a pure ortho kind of view from the top, like what you're looking at right now.
Simple map, yeah.
Simple. That is coming in actually the December release, so in only 2 months.
Wow. It's very exciting. I've taken a lot of your time. Is there anything else that you need to tell me that's going to excite me even more?
I think that's it. I think we covered the basics. I mean, it's always fun to talk to people like you, Gary, because you know, I think you have like a deep understanding of like what the world looks like today from a mapping perspective. And people don't realize this, right? People don't realize like A, that a lot of countries aren't well mapped, and B, how hard some of these tools are to use. I mean, I'm a huge fan of OpenStreetMap, you know, but quite frankly, do I love using their tools?
Yeah.
To like go and edit stuff? I mean, there's a lot of information and a lot of context and a lot of, you know, that training curve to really get good at it is quite steep.
Absolutely. And I assume, do you run AIs through this that would identify buildings and things like that, and then be able to plot that on your simple map, as it were, automatically picking out features?
So here, so like, let's say I want to just look at the building. So as I uncheck these, and those objects turn to gray. And so now it's just highlighting the structures, right? So obviously all these buildings are over here. It's highlighting then everything else. So for example, if I turn trees back on, you're going to see a lot of green show back up, right?
And are you,
so this is the object AI technology that's working.
And are you getting ready to pull in other data formats like LiDAR, for instance?
We already do pull LiDAR in, so let me show you that. Give me a second. So LiDAR is automatically pulled in We have a tremendous amount of LiDAR data warehouse. And so that's what you see right here. And it's going to take a couple moments to load just because, as you know, LiDAR is so extremely dense and heavy. But
it's all of this. So really, I mean, what you're showing me now in the browser, you say dense and heavy, but when we spoke 3 years ago, this would have taken proportionately longer just to scroll around the images as you've been doing. You know, things have moved on so quickly. So if we bolt on 10 years to now, this will be instantaneous, and our children will be wondering why anything ever arrived bit by bit on a screen. Why isn't it instantaneous? So that's a problem that I'm ranting at you again, sorry, that technology's solving, isn't it? And then here it comes. Absolutely. So is that imagery,
so this is a LiDAR.
Is the imagery draped onto this LiDAR underneath then?
Yeah, so you know, when Hivemapper builds its new map, and it geo-registers it, or some people say geo-rectification, you know, that's the process of basically, like a puzzle, assembling all the various pieces of the map and creating one continuous such that like every piece of the puzzle fits in with all the other pieces.
Yeah.
So LiDAR is this data.
It's pulling in so much data, it's balking the stream. I shouldn't have asked for this. It's pulling in so much data.
I think you're cutting out, Ariel.
Yeah, it's my fault.
You froze him.
It's my fault. Yeah. I knew I'd get rid of him somehow.
Oh, it looks like he's back. He's back.
So that data is quite heavy, but what's happening below the surface, deep into our technology stack, is that we're using that LiDAR to help us improve the accuracy of the map. And so, you know, we produce a map and then there's existing LiDAR data, and then we're basically saying, okay, what does LiDAR think where this point is, you know, and then where do we think it's at? And so it's used as a reference to improve the accuracy of our maps. And it's a fantastic data set, but it's not a great data set for humans to interact with.
Sure. Yeah. It's got to be cleaned up and all those other good things, isn't it? That's the other thing. Yeah. No, fantastic. Well, thank you very much. I truly hope this is recorded. I don't use this service because this has been a fantastic chat, and thank you very, very much for thinking of us. And I look forward to posting this and hopefully hearing it from you again a lot. Don't wait so long next time. I want to hear more success of this. Not wait another 3 years and find out exactly where we're at. And I am going to charge up my Phantom and see if I can have a go play with this probably on the weekend and see if I can fill in a couple of squares for myself.
Awesome. Well, we'd love to see your name on a bunch of tiles.
There won't be anyone else there. No, that's brilliant. Ariel, thank you very much. And Kerry, thank you very much for arranging this. Dear viewer, this is Hivemapper. This is going to be fitted into a story. I'll put the link to the story below, and we wish you every success and look forward to hearing again from you soon. So cheers for now.